There's one thing that we can say with a great deal of certainty about narcissists, and that is they have great difficulty being real or being authentic or genuine. Narcissists are mask wearers. And I don't mean that in the COVID-19 sense of the word. I mean that in the psychological sense of the word. What you see on the outside is not necessarily indicative of what's really going on the inside. You'll notice that they're constantly angling for the favored position. Now let's just pause right there. How does that happen? Well, somewhere along the way, usually it's deep into their early development, these individuals came to the determination, this world is not necessarily going to be friendly and predisposed towards me. And they may have had a lot of criticism or been exposed to all sorts of conditional acceptance. And so they decided, the best way for me to be a somebody is for me to control the narrative. And so this explains why sometimes they can be chameleons. They are very demanding and controlling in the way that they react with you. They have an agenda as to how you're supposed to see them because they've written the script so they get to be the hero at the end of it all. They can be hypersensitive when someone comes along and says, hey, wait a minute, I'm on to you. Their behavior, their mannerism implies that they have a lot of unfinished business that they just simply have not come to terms with. So that in mind, let's recognize you can tell more about a person not by their self-report, but by the way they conduct themselves in their basic interactions. And I want to see if we can expose 7 unspoken questions that quietly haunt that narcissist from the inside out. Okay, so let's get right to it. The first question that we're going to say that's unresolved on the inside of the narcissist is, these individuals ask, do you think that I'm significant? That's a huge question for them. You'll notice that they really have a deep and unnatural hunger for affirmation, to the point of adoration. Now, we all want to be significant in some way. We all want to be affirmed. But then when we get to the point where we can be so offended when someone comes along and says something very simple like, I disagree with you. And it's like, you don't affirm me. And their insecurity that comes along when there's a differentness or when someone doesn't really give them that high and lofty status implies that deep down on the inside, they don't really know if they're significant or not. They look for superficial reasons or indicators that might imply they're significant. They have the big car, or they're the one that is the chairman of this committee, or they have these nice things over here that kind of makes them feel like I'm a somebody. But down at the base of things, they don't have a sense of calmness or peace or patience. Those would be indicators of a person that says, I have my significance pretty well worked out. I'm okay with myself. That's a question. Do you think that I'm significant? That's a question they have not come to terms with. A second question, and that is, and this kind of goes along with the first one, who can I get to stroke my ego? Okay. Now, you'll notice that throughout many of the videos we have and you with others that you follow, you hear terms like narcissistic supply or flying monkeys, and I've put out a video about useful idiots. The narcissists are constantly looking for lackeys that they can bring into their lives that'll say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, you're it, you're the one. And so narcissists like to collect people that they think that they can control. And then if it's a big fish, so to speak, then they can say, hey, look, that person's on my team. They hunger for praise. They hunger for trophies. They have the need to have the appearance that says, I have now made it. They hunger for sexual affirmation, somebody that's going to stroke their ego in that kind of way. Anything that lets them know, okay, now people have acknowledged I'm a somebody. But the fact that they have to do that implies that that's an unsettled question on the inside. It's not really something they've really come to terms with. A third question they struggle with quietly, and that is, how do I compare to everyone else? Have you noticed, and of course I asked this question rhetorically, have you noticed that they have to be on top, don't they? To them, life is a competition. Who's better? Who's worse? They use what I refer to as evaluative thinking. If I can be evaluated as the best, the finest, the most important, then that means I win. And so they'll also look at you and they'll think in evaluation terms toward you. You're no good. You're a loser. You're dumb. You're an idiot. And so they put life into a scheme of high, low, superior, inferior, and they try to work the narrative so that they can be superior because they really don't want to be known as being average. How do I compare to everyone else? I've got to be on top because that's the only way I know that I am a somebody. The notion of equality is completely lost on them. A fourth question that they struggle to come to terms with, and that is, what do I have to do to get what I want? See, these people are very needy. They're very demanding. But then the narcissist takes that neediness and turns it into scheming. They're schemers. They're on the prowl. They try to figure out what they can do to make other individuals do their bidding. And so the evidence that that's an unfinished issue within themselves is to just watch how they intimidate people. Now, the way I'm going to get what I want is I'm going to intimidate you into doing what I tell you to do. They use guilt on you. They use blame and shame. They can run smear campaigns. They may try to bribe people, whatever they have to do. But it's like, I've got to get what I want, and I'm afraid that if I just live as a regular person, nobody's going to pay attention to me. But if I can be a bully, or if I can be overwhelming, or a force to be reckoned with, that means I'm a somebody. They've not really come to terms with that whole issue. Another question, number 5, that narcissists have not come to terms with is, why don't people respect me? Now, the biggest evidence that we can show that says that the narcissist has not come to terms with that is just watch for their anger. What's the function of anger? You know, if you and I have an anger between one another, that's like, hey, we're not on the same page, and I've got a frustration. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can come to terms with our differences. The narcissist, when they go to their place of anger, they go immediately to, hey, you're not showing me the respect that I deserve. Now, it's nice to say I'd like to have some respect, but the fact that they can be triggered so strongly and their anger can be so overpowering implies that they don't really know if they are respectable. They have to have it from you. They can't just have their own inner calmness and peace that says, well, if you disagree, fact is I can listen to you and maybe I'll even learn something. But their anger is in direct proportion to their question about whether they are indeed a respectable person. They just don't know what to do with it when somebody doesn't give them the respect they feel like they deserve. A 6th question they've not come to terms with is, why do people not trust me? Now, again, I want you to think, the evidence that this is an unfinished question is in their defensiveness. You know, let's suppose someone comes along and says, I'm not really sure why you did A instead of B. And so they can come along and say, so you think I'm an idiot? You think I just don't know what I'm talking about? They just have this pathological defensiveness. It's like, no, I'm just trying to get some clarification. Oh, so now you're telling me that I don't even know what I'm talking about. And they can have this deep need to defend themselves. They have to justify themselves. Many times they're defensive by becoming offensive, so they put you on the defense. But basically, they're so thin-skinned, and their thin-skinned nature says, I can't believe that somebody would have a question about me. I don't think you trust me. And rather than learning how to develop their own self-trust, like we've talked in other videos, they just they stay stuck in that sense of defensiveness. And then a 7th question that's obviously left unanswered on the inside, and that is, what would happen if people discovered unflattering things about me? That scares them to death. So the evidence that they've not come to terms with that issue is they lie. They keep secrets. They reveal only half-truths, or they just don't let you know certain things about who they are. They're constantly in a cover-up kind of mode because it's like, well, if people find out that I'm somebody who makes mistakes, or I have failings or difficulties, or if I've spent money in ways that they don't want me to spend, or if I have priorities that they may disapprove of, they may think that I'm no good. So I'll keep doing that stuff because I'm so impressed with me. but I'm really afraid what would happen if people found out who the real me is. And so they don't want to be seen in an unflattering light. And instead of changing their behavior so they don't have to worry about it, they just cover up. They go into secret keeping mode. All of this implies narcissists are tormented souls. Now, they will try to let you know, oh, I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm real comfortable with me. But the fact that they have so many patterns and behaviors and tendencies that speak of strain and difficulty, and they just seem to bring all sorts of difficulty to the relationships where they go. It says, no, you've got all of these questions that you've not come to terms with that are haunting you from the inside out. And then you're trying to put your solutions onto me, like I'm supposed to be the one that makes you feel wonderful, and I'm not going to play that role. Now, ideally, the narcissist would take a look at these 7 questions that I've mentioned and say, I've got some real thinking to do. I've got a need for some tremendous insight. I'd like to do the hard work of figuring all that out. Is that going to happen? Every now and then you might get that to happen, maybe after a big, huge crisis, but more often than not, it doesn't happen. So that being the case, I'm hoping that you can read some of their behaviors and recognize that their offbeat behaviors are indicative of their own inner turmoil. And rather than taking responsibility for making that go away, which is what they're trying to do, you can decide, I've got enough work to do on my side of the street. I'm trying to be a clean and right and proper kind of individual. And if this person doesn't want to do the hard work within themselves, then that's someone I can't afford to be attached to. I'm going to be in a growth mode. I'm going to be over here working to be on team healthy. And I'm not going to get entangled with all of their unfinished business that they're trying to push off onto me. Now, I do hope that you get some insight as you go through videos such as this. And if you'd like, I'd encourage you to hit that subscribe button so we can keep more videos coming your way. Sometimes when you are apprised of topics like this, it can stir up some questions on the inside. And you might decide, I'd like to get some help from a licensed professional counselor. And right now, online counseling is a very popular kind of thing. So we've vetted a trusted sponsor. We have a link below there if you need to get the counseling. I really encourage you to do that. And we have a link that can take you to some people that can do that for you. In addition, we have our other websites, survivingnarcissism.tv, by drlescarter.com. We have links to my books, my online video workshops, and we even have coffee mugs. So avail yourself to the things that are beneath the video. Now, just know that as you have an awareness of what's cooking on the inside of the narcissist, that gives you a sense of insight, and it gives you the ability to plan how you're going to manage your life relative to them. And I want you to stay away from their confusion. And I'm hoping that you can have steadiness. I'm hoping that you can have self-awareness. And in doing so, I hope that it leads you and keeps you in a life of peace.